Thank you, and good afternoon, and hopefully I don't have too many slides. Anwar and myself both worked at the CSIR. He retired a year ago. I retired 3 months ago. And while he contributed, all the mistakes are mine. So I looked at what CODATA has strategically to see how does that fit in with a country like South Africa. So obviously the strategic plan correlates with the long-standing priorities. So data policy, well, you know, there's too many bloody policies, I'm sorry, but it's very easy to write policies. And policies get in the way with doing things. But what's really difficult is to actually implement the policies, and that's a huge problem that we have in South Africa. In terms of data science and stewardship, we have inadequate reward mechanisms, and I'm sure you're going to hear something similar to that from other people around the world. And so maybe there needs to be decent incentives for proper stewardship. Data skills, we've got very poor schooling. Our schooling's about the worst in the world in terms of those that get measured. And obviously mathematics is a major problem there. And then making data work for cross-domain grand challenges, well, first of all, the big problem is the lack of awareness of it, but the even bigger problem, I guess, is funding, and we have silos. Okay, the FAIR principles, you probably know these all already. But before a data set can become fair, it actually needs to exist. Okay, and a huge problem we have is a lot of data gets lost in South Africa, particularly because our government keeps on getting rearranged every 5 minutes. There is a Promotion of Access to Information Act, which is, many of you have similar things in your countries, but very, very poor compliance to it in South Africa. And I mean, this is a problem in other countries as well, that their government entities want to profit from their data, and so they don't make the data available. CODATA wants some case studies for Welfare Plus, but obviously we have a huge funding problem, so it's unlikely we'll contribute. So the findability, as I mentioned, government keeps on changing, and what results is the domain names change, so there's instability with domain names. As soon as the department changes its name, it changes its domain name. And there's no proper keeping of tracking, so that redirecting to the new name. Inadequate referencing for data sets. And so, yeah, accessible, link rot, it's both the defunct domain names, but also a lot of broken links. Firewalls is a huge problem, both a problem to access behind a firewall, but also for a lot of our government departments and so on, they have fanatical people controlling the firewalls, and they basically prevent access to anything. Metadata, I'm sure you all have problems with inadequate and missing metadata. And then, yeah, there's a lot of confusion over intellectual property, copywriting and licensing. In terms of interoperability, inadequate implementation of standards, inadequate or missing metadata, and there really needs to be management and government advocacy of these. And reusable, again, inadequate or missing metadata and link rot. Now, the SAN code of research ethics is something that maybe you are not aware of. So the SAN are one of those indigenous communities that were I guess treated like zoo animals and subjected to a lot of research by scientists or whatever over the centuries. And they produced this Code of Research Ethics in 2017, and these things are probably familiar to some of you in terms of how to deal with getting data from Indigenous communities, wanting respect for individuals, community, culture, history, and everything, honesty, not having all the academic jargon, justice and fairness. And what's very interesting about this is that there are consequences for the lack of ethics. So if a researcher contravenes this code, it's not the researcher who will be blacklisted, it's the entire organization that they come from. So it really puts the emphasis on the management of that organization to ensure that they are careful about what their researchers do. There needs to be care for everyone involved, family, social, physical environment, because the physical environment for the sand is very important. And the research needs to be excellent. They're not interested in Mickey Mouse stuff. And there needs to be a proper process, and that process needs to be designed and approved collectively, and also the results need to be published collectively. And I'm sure that you realize that this doesn't just apply to Indigenous communities. This actually applies to everyone where they are being used to extract data, to be studied, and so on. So respect, they're actually within the country positive. We have a great awareness now, particularly of the treatment of people like Sarah Bartman and others. A good understanding across society that humans are not cultural artifacts and they're not symbols. Honesty is difficult, of course, because we have a multilingual society. We actually have 12 official languages now. And, medical and scientific terminology is very complex, and that's used as a way to screen the people being researched from actually knowing what's being done. And I think with justice and fairness, the real key is with the funders, both the internal funders within the organization, but also external funders, to make sure that justice and fairness are adhered to. Unintended consequences, a huge problem with care, and process, again, the funders, and ethics committees. So care, you're all aware of that. Perhaps in a country like South Africa, it's more important than fair. Funding is the huge problem. I don't know why this thing doesn't work when you're near the end. So collective benefit, a huge problem we have is academic imperialism, where people in highly developed countries want to work with South Africans, but only if we're just providing data. The authority control, Indigenous knowledge systems, again, is very well understood in South Africa, within government, within academia, and also it's important that you recognize the knowledge holders. Responsibility, you need to develop terminology in all the language. Ethics can be a problem because it takes forever for an ethics committee to approve anything, and the key problem is they don't meet often because they don't have funding. And please don't forget to come to IDW 2027 in Cape Town. Thank you all.